In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I would like to greet all of you. Greeting words of peace, we say them in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum, but in English it's simply, or I shouldn't say simply because it's a prayer of peace be unto you. I want to thank you all for tuning in to Knowledge for Life's Knowledge Cipher. And what we're focusing on with these series of lectures is generational trauma. To many of us, this is a new word, generational trauma. That along with what is called epigenetics. And these are two things where our trauma has caused us to react or act in a certain way that is in truth not productive, or in some cases even self-destructive. And so what we want to do is we want to address in this forum how generational trauma has misshaped our relationships and also how it had misshaped our family dynamics. And we want you to subscribe, as they always say, subscribe, like, and follow us. And so with that, I'm going to introduce a beautiful sister, a young sister, a powerful sister, a dynamic sister. And this sister is very inspiring when it comes down to young people. Please give a warm round of applause to my sister, Sister Rickia Woods.
And I want to discuss a little bit about the impact of slavery on the family dynamic. And I want to go back to the Willie Lynch letter because he made it very clear. So this is another snippet of the Willie Lynch letter. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse. So basically he compares you gotta break the slave like you would a horse. A brief course in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generational of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Therefore, if you break the mother, she will break the offspring in early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver it to you, for her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. So they use the female as the tool to bring the black family down, right? This is the black female is one of their most powerful tools to bring down the culture. Now, this is something else but this is what they did. It was a psychological war that they had to play on the female to make her psychologically frozen. So listen to this. We reverse nature. So now, right, they're playing God. We reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized apart and bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reverse roles. For fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak, independent, but physically strong. What do you see within our culture, right? You see a lot of men that are physically strong, but that are mentally weak. This has been conditioned in us for hundreds of years now, and they use the woman as the backbone to bring down our culture. And so what we need to do is they rebirth, so we need to go back to our natural state, our natural being, right? And this is healing the trauma that has been passed down for hundreds of years. Not only was it the slavery trauma that we endured too, but you have to think right after slavery, what did we have to go through? The Jim Crow era, right? Where we've seen a lot of lynchings. This is another psychological war that was on our people in this field. After Willie Lynch, what other era did we come into? Not only did they lynch us, but then they started burning down communities that we built. After that era, what did we go through? Then we experienced a crack epidemic where they brought drugs and poverty into our neighborhoods. And we know how the drugs, they actually talk about it in what we're going to discuss, how drugs can have an impact on your sight, right? So now you have these kids that's experiencing broken households with the use of drugs. And now what do we have? Then we got to go between the 90s, right? When they came out with the rap music and the gangster rap, right? In the movies that they indoctrinated our people with. And after that, now we're in an era where now we've adapted this, I like to call it baby mama, baby daddy culture, right? That we've instilled in our people because for generations, we haven't seen a man in the household. So we've come to normalize this type of destructive behavior, not realizing that it's bringing our people down as a whole. So with that being said, I just want to explain how the family dynamic is important because a broken home makes for a broken house, and they know this, right? And when you don't have that family foundation, not only does the mother become stressed, right, having to deal with being the man and the woman in the household, right, where he said it very clearly, we're raising our offspring in reverse roles. So now within our culture, you're seeing very masculine women and very feminine men from the women having to take on both roles within our community. So that's what I have to say about that. So that's the trauma that Steve experienced from slavery until now, which has been hundreds of years. So I would like to introduce our next guest, which is Brother Robert Muhammad, and he will talk more about the family dynamic as well. Brother Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I'd like to meet and greet you all in the nation's greedy words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. First, I want to thank Brother Steve and his staff for putting on this event. It's definitely needed. I'm grateful and thankful for you inviting me to be a part of this. I think it's phenomenal, so I thank you and all of those who are in attendance. So as we look at this particular program, that I believe this might be one of the first, if not the first, segment of this series that Brother Steve has put together, titled Healing from Pain to Power, Healing Generational Trauma in the Black Community. And those of us who have grown up in the Black community, and those of us who are familiar with the Black community, I think it's so evident based upon the activity that has gone on and that is going on, that there's a significant amount of trauma upon those who live in the Black community. And when we look at trauma can be in many different forms. Trauma can come in the form of physical abuse or something that can happen to you physically. It can happen to you in relation to something that you see happen. And it also can be something that has happened genetically. It can also be something that can happen to someone through words or through actions. We don't have enough time to go into the significance of trauma, but let's look at the family structure in the Black community. Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th President of the United States, his term was from 1963 to 1969. He stated at an address at Howard University titled "To Fulfill These Rights" on June 4th, 1965, again at Howard University. He stated that men are shaped by their world. When it is a world of decay, ringed by an invisible wall, when escape is arduous and uncertain, and the stating pressures of a more hopeful society are unknown, it can cripple the youth and it can desolate the men. Then he talks about the family breakdown. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that the family is the cornerstone of civilization. Lyndon B. Johnson stated that more than any other force, it shapes the attitude, the hopes, the ambitions, and the values of the child. And when the family collapses, it is the children that are usually damaged. When it happens on a massive scale, the community itself is crippled. So if you look at the condition of the black family in 2024, it plays a critical role in the activity of the people in the black community. As I was growing up, I remember strong black families. Therefore, you had strong black community. You had strong black schools. You had strong black businesses. So you had, in an essence, a strong black environment, and in a limited perspective, because we understand that our plight here in America from 1555 to 2025 coming up on in 470 years, it's not where it should be, but based upon where it was and where it has been and where it is now, there's been different dynamics. But coming up in my generation, I saw a strong black family. If you look at the community now, you don't see strong black families. Therefore, you see a desolate community. Now, this particular subject matter, and let me know how long I have to go, because I'll never stop. 5 minutes? Okay, so 5 minutes. So, in these 5 minutes, the healing has to start from a historical perspective. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us that first, history is above all of our study, the most attractive and best qualified to reward our research as it develops the springs and motives of human actions and displays the consequences of circumstances which operates most powerfully on the destinies of the human being. So in order for us to know where we are now and where we are desirous to go, we emphatically must know where we came from. Now, I'm an avid reader, and I believe that in the Word is significant power and transforming power, that if we would become better readers and become people who read more, that we could transform our own lives, and in transforming our own lives, we can rebuild our community, rebuild our cities, rebuild our nation, and ultimately rebuild the world. So in this quest for knowledge through reading, I constantly buy books that I see, that are intriguing, and that I believe that can help me. And in my time, my desire is to help others, to avoid the mistakes that I was able to make, or based upon the research that I have a thirst and desire to go out and get, to share that with you and those who want to be helped. So, it was just as I was looking over the itinerary today and thinking over what I would like to say, I came across a book that I purchased. I haven't read yet. I've got probably 40 books on deck that are brand new that I haven't read. But inshallah, I will get to them because I'm constantly reading. But if it's a book that I see, I get it. So I thought about your subject matter. And in conclusion, I looked at this book and I was like, I said, I know I've got a book that's significant to what we're talking about today. And if you have not heard of, there's a sister, her name is Dr. Joy DeGroot. And I saw her on X, formerly Twitter. And she was really profound in what she had to say to this body of students that she was speaking to. And I looked her up and I went to her website and I was immediately attracted to this sister based upon what she was saying, her presentation, and reading some of her words. So the book that I think is essential to what this topic is based on and where it's going is post-traumatic slave syndrome, America's legacy of enduring injury and healing. So I think this is extremely important. And as we go forward, if I'm able and if I'm blessed to present or just to be a guest, I'm going to go deeper into this because I know unequivocally, without a doubt, that what has happened to us, what is happening to us now, is directly linked to our sojourn here in America through chattel slavery, through Jim Crow, through the civil rights, through drugs, through the destruction of the black family, through alcoholism, through the penitentiary, through the educational system, through Jim Crow is why where we are now. But the bottom rail will rise to the top. So there's a reason why we're going through what we're going through now, is because I believe we're firmly being prepared to bring in a new world based upon that condition that we have been placed in. And, you know, in conclusion, you don't get a diamond just by going and finding the diamond. You got to dig deep, deep in the earth. Then you get a coal, and you have to put heat and pressure, and heat and pressure, and heat and pressure. And then over this process, you will get that diamond. So we are in that process of heat and pressure to where we can come and reflect the reality that we should reflect, which is God Himself. Therefore, we can assist others in that transforming process. So thank you. As I leave you, as I came, I'll throw in the lake.
So that portion was basically helping us to understand how some of these bad, if you will, behaviors have found their way into our family dynamics. And so now what we want to do is we want to expose some of those behaviors, and we'll go ahead in the last portion of the program, we'll go ahead and go into how we can begin to heal from those bad behaviors. I first wanted to also thank the Opportunity Center out here at Westtown Shopping Center. It's a wonderful facility that is allowing us to host this program. And with that, I want to call up a brother who I've known for quite some time. He's a brother who has worked with children in the public school system and in other arenas. So with that, please give a warm round of applause to Brother Danny Rodriguez. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Peace, just like he said, thank you, Steven, first of all, for inviting me. I appreciate it, brother. We have been on each other for a while, and when you call, I show up as much as I can. So thank you, and I hope we can have a fruitful discussion. My name is Danny Rodriguez. I'm an educator. I teach in the Bay Public School System. I have taught at Job Corps as well. That's how I met Brother Steve. I've been teaching great dancing and capoeira pretty much for the last 20 years, working with young people pretty much most of my life. Born and raised in New York City, joined the United States Navy, left New York City, traveled the world, and then touched down to Virginia. That's where I met my wife, and we had all our babies, and then we moved here. Currently an empty nester. My youngest just left to go to Morehouse, so really, really happy, excited, but also being a dad is something that I always wanted to be ever since I was young. So just like the brother was talking about earlier, I remember a time when having knowledge of self was hit. Right? I remember I went to school in Harlem, so I remember even girls with a date you, you'd have knowledge of self. Like they would be like, you don't know who Marcus Garvey is, you know who Elijah Muhammad is, we can't go out on a date. That's the era that I came from, right? Where we was always doing ciphers. We always really to this day in my house we still do ciphers, right? I still teach my babies the supreme mathematics, the supreme alphabet, and some of my students might get that opportunity. So I've been doing that pretty much all my life, doing work just in the community. I come from a long line of activists. My mom was a union organizer, so was my brother. And I'm also in the union as well. So pretty much community work has been in my DNA. That's something that my mom instilled in us very young. We grew up in the projects, Chase Monroe houses in the Bronx. People used to call it Vietnam because it was that dangerous. And I remember like Jamel Shabazz says, a time before crack, right? So I remember there was a time when you could hang out late and If you was doing something wrong and the neighbor saw you, you was in trouble. Right? As soon as you got home, you was in trouble. So I remember when it went from that to, 14-year-olds having AK-47s. I remember that happening just like that. I remember a time when if you bought a knife to school, everybody thought you was nuts, right? But now we're worried about, now we have a situation where people were bringing guns to school. So I saw that happen overnight. So crack cocaine, it brought the drug addiction and the abuse, but it also brought a lot of gun violence to our communities. And I remember when it was in the thousands, right? When it was like 10 cities, New York, Cleveland, all of them were, 2,500 murders per year. So I had a lot of homies and relatives that are dead or in prison. Some people who have been, crack cocaine offenses since the 80s and they're still locked up. I have friends that I will never see again because they'll never leave, the prison. So it's been rough. So that's actually one bit of trauma, right? My folks come from the Dominican Republic, so I'm a child of immigrants and also a child of colonialism. A child of anti-blackness, a child of abuse, violence, all those things that come with that when it comes to colonialism, especially when it invades our communities. So domestic violence is something that I'm very used to and seeing. Alcoholism is something that I'm very used to and seeing around me growing up, and it had a profound impact in my life. So I thank the young brothers and sisters that gave me knowledge of myself, because really, like he was saying, when I look at all my homies who were bigger, stronger, smarter, faster than me in all ways, the difference really what made me come out, it was two things. It was my mom and my extended family, but also reading. The love of reading is really what got me out of there. And to this day, my mother jokes me all the time because I'm always reading. When I get up in the morning, I'm always reading. I'm on the toilet, I'm reading. When I'm at the bank, I had a student tell me, "Mr. Rodriguez, I saw you at Sharks, reading a book." And I was like, "Oh, you did?" I was like, "I don't remember being at Sharks, but I guess," right? So, that's what they know me for. So, but also breakdancing has taught me that, and yes, I still breakdance. It has taught me that my duty is to create safer spaces for our boys. And that's something that I've been doing pretty much informally and formally, always creating safer spaces. And capoeira as well. Capoeira has taught me that I need to bring those ciphers, and we call them holdouts or circles. Ciphers also circle, right? We need to bring those to the community. And that's something I've always done in my house, outside of my house. So I teach capoeira for free. I teach breakdancing for free for whoever wants to know, because I was taught for free. So, and I remember it was the young brothers when I was coming up in the hood. It was the older cats that were teaching me how to fight. They taught me martial arts at a very young age. So I thought that it only makes sense for me to do the same thing. I would do them a disservice if I tried to keep that. So raising a family, again, it's something I've always wanted to do, and it's not easy, right? It's really not easy. There's a movie called what's it called? The Mevers Boys. It stars I can't remember her name, but anyway, it's about the Tuskegee experiment, right? And we know what happened in the Tuskegee experiment, right? They took a lot of brothers and they had syphilis and they didn't treat them. And there's a scene where Lawrence Fishburne's character leaves, he joins the army, he comes back and he's cured from syphilis. And they're like, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "When I joined the army, they gave me this pill and I was good." But that scene always struck me because one thing I've learned about this community work is that if we have all this trauma, the only way we're going to fix it is in community healing. I have a therapist. I'll go see my therapist. I have a group of brothers and sisters that always have my back. So I had that community, but my community is not healing. So does that really matter if I'm healed and my community isn't healed? It doesn't. It doesn't work that way, right? We're not going to cure a community if just one person's healed. So we have to bring everybody into community. So my solution has always been that we have to do the healing in community. Thank you.
We didn't have some powerful speakers. I like this. It got me ramped up. Okay, so we have another guest speaker coming up. I've been seeing her work for like the past few years, but I had the pleasure of actually meeting her this year, and it was definitely a pleasure. She does very powerful healing events within the community. She focuses on our women, our young girls, right? And this is something that is important, instilling that self-love and self-worth back into our women. So please give a warm welcome to Miss Angelica X, and she will talk about the healing portion, right? The healing portion, what needs to be done within our community. And then you could also touch on the trauma and et cetera, or whatever comes to you. But I definitely had the pleasure of meeting her, seeing the work that she does, and it's very vital and it's very important within our community. So I'm happy we have all these people in here coming together to talk about what's needed. So, Miss Angelica.
Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. I pray you guys are feeling well. I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't prepare myself. However, I always pray to Allah to guide me and guide my words. So, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of being up here on this panel to speak about something that is very, very important. I truly believe that we are in a time of healing. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to really dive deep into the healing because we hear the word healing, but what does healing mean? You know, for me, healing is the restoration. Healing is being reborn again because, again, like my sister said earlier in the program, you know, we've been made other than ourselves, basically, just through the environmental things that we've been going through from slavery. And then now we have the post-traumatic slave disorder that we're still going through today, right? So when it comes to healing, I really dive deep into that because I had to have my own experience of healing. And it wasn't until I experienced a life and death situation within myself to where I had to call on God, you know. And in that moment, I realized the healing power that I had within myself, just within prayer, you know. So within that took me on a journey of just finding what it is that I needed to do to heal myself. What is it? Has it been 4 years? 4 years ago, after I had my son, I was diagnosed with a thyroid issue, that made me lose a dramatic amount of weight. I had extreme anxiety. However, even through that, during a pregnancy, I also had a lot of anxiety, depression. I was going through a lot because prior to that, 6 years ago, I had lost my son through stillborn. So I was still dealing with things, not knowing that I was dealing through these things as I was pregnant with my son now and even afterwards. So just going through that process that I went through when I was pregnant, after pregnancy, having an issue with my thyroid, I wanted to go on a journey of self-healing. During that time, it was the pandemic. It was a lot going on. I really didn't like medicine, didn't trust it. So I did everything I could do to figure out how I can heal myself. I studied a lot of books. I looked into Queen Afua. At the time, I was into, I didn't join the Nation of Islam yet. However, I was studying How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, just trying to see things that I can do to self-heal myself. And within that time, I had the faith and the courage, and after I found out I was diagnosed with thyroid issues, I was able to reverse it through a healthy diet, being able to be more present in my life, taking time to myself. Within that, I was able to heal myself through that, and my thyroid numbers been great since then. So within that journey, mind you, I've been through a lot prior to that. Within that time, I also needed to just see what it is that was going on within me. So as I was healing, going through that issue with my thyroid, just having son, I took that time to look into myself. And as I was looking into myself and just thinking about all the things that I've been through, I actually had a lot of emotional trauma that I dealt with from when I was a child. I was in an abusive family home. I was in an abusive relationship from the time I was 14 to the time I was 25. So through that time of trauma that I went through, I realized, like, wow, what was going on? What's going on with me? And even though I could go back and blame mom and dad, you know, for not being knowledgeable to, you know, give me the insight that I needed so I wouldn't grow up in that way, I was grown enough to know that, okay, I think that these things happen. And actually, when you understand the condition of our people, you really, really have a sense of empathy to understand that, honestly, our people don't even know that they're in this condition. So it gave me more empathy, actually, to understand our people and also understand how I can heal myself. So within the journey of healing, what I realized is really, really a journey of self-improvement. If you as an individual can improve your life, And if you work on yourself, work on things that needs to be healed, and you bring that to your community, and you be around like-minded people that is wanting to heal, you're able to create a community and environment of healing. Most of the time, it's just us telling our stories. I believe God took us through things in our life, not just because, but for a reason. Everything that we've been through in our life is also a pathway for someone else to heal. Because it was through those stories that I've heard of people with certain health problems or the strain anxiety, how they got through it, which helped me get through it. So I believe when it comes to healing, it is first self first, then others, because it's about self-preservation. I also learned that, it's hard for you to pour into someone else's cup when you cannot pour into your own. Or you drain yourself pouring into others, So it's self first, then others. And as you heal, and as you're healing, that's when you take other people along on a journey with you. So again, I just want to say thanks to my Brother Steve, for allowing me the opportunity to stand up here, and just want us to all understand and to know as well is that healing is a journey, and it's not a one-day thing. It's really a lifestyle. Healing is a lifestyle. So each and every day you do little things to improve, and you're going to relapse, many a times. But you keep going. As long as God keeps you here and you're here, you keep going, and don't fight yourself. Allow those emotions to come up. Allow those times where you want to talk and you want to speak. Allow yourself to speak in any way, shape, or form. If it's in writing, if it's actually speaking, because honestly, when you really think about it, we've been suppressed for so long. And even if I go back and I think as I was a child and seeing the younger people growing up today, they don't have a voice. And because they don't have a voice, they feel like they can't speak, and they feel like they can't express themselves. We are made in the expression of God. So we have these innate abilities to have to express ourselves. So when you can't express yourself, if it's in words, writing, speaking, whatever way you want to express yourself, you will continue to suppress yourself until you get into a stagnation, to where most of the time you run into these bad habits and find other ways to express what it is that you got going on. So, I did want to kind of touch a little bit on what my sister said, because she brought up the value of the woman, and just how they use the woman to control, what's going on in the society. Most of the time we see the propaganda, the things that we see on TV with our women. Our women are being broken down, and our women are being made other than themselves. And because they're being made other than themselves, they are bringing in children that are also being turned. And that is creating a cycle of the generational curse that we see. So I truly believe, and that's why I feel like God took me on this path to work with women, because it was through me self-healing. It was through me reconnecting to Source, God, whoever you would like to call it. It was within me reconnecting with myself and God, where I was able to understand my worth and my value, and also understand that my womb is a creation from God, and this is what God used to bring upon the earth. So when we understand that our women are being broken down, they're being abused, they're being mishandled, and because they don't know their self, and they don't know the knowledge of their self in God, it keeps them on a lower level to where they settle. And as our women continue to settle, they continue to bring in children that don't know themselves. And again, that's that continuation of their generational cycle. So it's so important for women in general to know who they are and know their value, and understand how important it is that we be mindful of who we give ourselves to, because when we do that, again, we're bringing up these children, and we're bringing up children into the world that don't know themselves, don't understand themselves, don't understand their value, don't even know who they are. So it always goes back to the root of knowledge. once the woman understand the knowledge of herself, she's able to implant it into her seed. Because from what I learned from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the womb is the workshop of God. That is where He creates in our womb. And in our womb is the answer to our prayers most of the time. So I just wanted to talk about that. I really wanted to dive deep with the woman conversation. But again, I want to say thank you, Brother Steve, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I'll leave you all in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
And we'll definitely hear some more from Sister Angelica, and definitely Google search Angelica, Healing with Angelica, because she does a phenomenal job. As Sister Rickia said, that she has a lot of good information, especially for women who want to find themselves and who want to begin that healing process. And so I want to just talk a little bit myself about generational trauma, and then I'm going to bring up our next speaker, and then we're going to go ahead and just take questions and answers. Generational trauma is something that come out of the study of those who are survivors of the Holocaust. Now, I want you to really kind of think about that, because the survivors of those who come out of the Holocaust, that was after 1940, 1945. But think about the fact that black people have been here, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, since 1555. They knew that black people were suffering from generational trauma. And instead of trying to reparate us, to heal us, they began to use what you could call psychological warfare, or what you could call social engineering, to capitalize on our generational trauma. They are using our traumatic behavior, and that's what it is. It's a traumatic behavior. It's a traumatic behavior that has been classified. Now we call it black culture.
Come on.
We call it black culture, but it's not black culture at all, because culture is something that every organism uses for survival. Culture is a way that people relate to each other, a way for people to have what's called a code of conduct, right? A code of conduct where you can be productive and not destructive. So what you see today coming out of the music, coming out of what we see even on television, where we're always playing the clown, where we're always, and you know, they have little subliminal things. It was funny when I was growing up, one of the subliminal things that we always used to point out was we always used to ask, why the black person always get killed first? They still do it. But you know, one of the things that we have to look at today is that generational trauma you don't necessarily have to be personally inflicted with generational trauma. You can see a thing and it can be traumatizing. For instance, when black people, and we don't have really a year, we don't have a month, we don't have a day, we really almost don't even have an hour where we don't hear about a black person being subjected to some type of abuse by the criminal justice system and their hand, or the police force. And so when we see these type of things on television reenacted over and over and over and over again, then you wonder why you see police pulling black people over and they're terrified and they're running from the police. This is generational trauma. And so what my brother Robert was saying is that if America doesn't want to give us reparations, if it doesn't want to give us justice, God is going to give us justice. And it would be better for America to give us justice. It would be better for America to give us reparations, because I remember reading where it says in the scriptures that God heard the cry of the children of Israel, and he came down himself. And we already know what happened to Pharaoh and the children and Pharaoh's people. So it would be wise for the government of America to do justice by the black man and black woman. With that, I want to bring up Sister Jenny Gagan, and she's a public executive secretary of the Church of Scientology of Central Ohio. She has 25 years experience. And before I bring her up, I just want to say that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that Dianetics is a tool that we can use as a people that will help us to bring balance back into our lives. Dianetics, once again, is a tool that we can use as black people to bring not only balance in our lives, but begin to put those traumatic memories into the right category where they don't affect how we act or react to a certain situation. So with that, I want to bring up Sister Jenny, and if you could come right on up, and I'll move the camera up a little bit because you're even taller than me. All right there.
Wow, thank you guys so much. I just want to say it is so awesome being here. I really appreciate it and feel like you have granted me a lot of grace in being this, and I really appreciate being here. So I have been working in the field of just self-improvement for 25 years. I had my first experience with Dianetics when I was having panic attacks when I was a child and then a teenager, and those just got very out of control, followed me into my life. You know, I'd be an executive, go running around doing what I'm doing, go hide in a closet, have a panic attack, and be like, what is wrong with me? So the first time I experienced Dianetics was like night and day difference, and all of those anxiety moments in my life just completely stopped. And I was like, this is definitely something that I need to look into more. It was funny because it was kind of an accident. Someone was like, hey, I'm training to be a Dianetics auditor. Will you be my guinea pig? It's like, you know what? Why not? You know? So I definitely feel very blessed to have had that experience. And from that point forward, I started working with other people. I started volunteering, and I learned how to do the Dianetics technique, and I found it helps pretty much anyone that I've ever found. So that's a little bit about me, so you guys understand a little bit. So in all the years that I have worked on helping people with trauma, I found two really important factors that you have to deal with on this platform, which is the first is that, and this is regardless of race, color, creed, religion, beliefs, anything like that. The first is having therapy, which is counseling, could be Dianetics, could be with Sister Angelica, for example, anything that you find that's therapeutic for you. But you have to actually address the trauma that occurred. Because if you don't handle that, you can do whatever you want, but those underlying factors are still going to be there. And we use Dianetics as a therapy, and it's very scientific, and that really works. Which I'll go into in a little bit more in a moment. The second thing is actually education. Because, you know, this could be learning about your life, the mind. It could also include retraining yourself out of negative behavior, right? So if you've had, you know, a problem communicating, you're trying to go into a relationship, and you don't handle that problem with your ability to communicate, You can handle the trauma, but you won't fix the problem either. Those are really important things. So, the first thing though to better understand yourself is understanding the parts of man. And that's actually covered in this book, Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought. So there's a chapter in here called The Parts of Man. And it goes over that, this is somewhat common sense, okay? But I'm just going to go over this very briefly. So the first is the spirit. This is the person themselves. And that is the part of you that is aware of being aware. It's your personality, your drive, the things you like, everything that makes you, you. The second is the mind. And that is, your mind is recording everything in a moment-to-moment basis. And this is being stored in your mind as a mental image picture. Very similar to how you have all the pictures you love of your family and your life on your phone, and they just stay there, right? It's the same thing. Now, these mental image pictures, they're actually recording everything at that moment. That includes sight, sound, your perceptions, your emotions, pain, happiness, anything like that. It will record all of those things and store them for future use. And these could be either good memories or bad memories, depending on that moment of your life. And the mind there's two parts, one that stores the positive memories and the other that stores those negative memories, which I'll explain a little bit more in a moment. And then the final component is the body. So that's the third part. And that's the physical tool. We use it every day to sleep, run, walk, eat, do our jobs, all this kind of stuff. Best way to learn about that is studying textbook on anatomy. I don't know as much about that topic. So you have these three parts of man. And the thing about it is these three parts very much work together. They affect each other a lot. So if you handle the body, right, you have something going on with your body, you have to handle that. If you don't also address the other two, they all affect each other. Just like no different than if you're feeling ill, you may not be in the best of moods at that moment, right? So it's important to address all three of those. And Dianetics and Scientology are two separate terms. I want to just clear up very simply what those are. Dianetics is a therapy that specifically addresses the mind, and it just means how the mind is affecting the body. That's all that word means. Scientology addresses the spirit, and it just gives you tools for handling life. The word Scientology, it just means knowledge. So as today we're addressing trauma and how that, affects the person, I want to give you a little bit more of a breakdown of the mind, how it stores and then handles trauma. Okay, so when you store memories, your mind is having two main divisions. The first is called the analytical mind. This is, it analyzes, it's compute. That's the conscious mind or the aware mind that's going to observe data, remember that, and then use that to improve your life and enhance your survival. And that is the mind that's conscious and aware of being aware. You solve problems with that. For example, it's Mother's Day. You want to give your mother her favorite pair of earrings or favorite flowers. So you use your memory to remember the moment she went to the store and got, say an orchid, and that's her favorite type of flower. You're going to go get that. She's going to be very happy with you. So that's the analytical mind. That is going to be using data to create an analysis of what to do. But the other mind is the reactive mind, and that operates without analysis. So the reactive mind is the mind that stores all the bad things that have happened to you and then throws them back at you in moments of stress or danger or emergency or perceived danger. It is a stimulus response mind, so it just reacts, right? And it turns on or starts recording during moments of physical or emotional pain. And it will continue to record. Even if you are unconscious, and you have you're in a car accident, let's say, it's still recording all of those moments at that time. So a mild example would be, say you have a child, he touches the stove, it burns him really bad. Of course, he yanks his hand off, now he has a burn, and now he has a moment of pain regarding stoves. Probably good for a child to have a little bit of a fear of stoves, because obviously that's not where you want them to get burned. But later in life, he starts looking at these stoves, gets a little nervous about cooking. He's now an adult, he needs to learn how to do that. But he may not even realize why, but he might feel a little bit like, let the wife do that, this kind of a thing, right? Or let's say you have a more extreme example. You have a woman in an abusive relationship, right? And, her boyfriend at the time is a very tall, kind of intimidating guy. She finally breaks up, moves on with her life. Several years later, she finds someone, the very, very nice, total gentleman, happens to be very tall, right? So she might automatically start to feel a little bit nervous around him, even though she sees what a great person that he is and she's, dating him or whatever. Or you might find she might get a little bit overly annoyed or a little bit more mad, just an irritation, right? Because the reactive mind is going, danger, danger, Will Robinson. Like this person could be potentially a threat to you. And it starts to kick in this sort of fight or flight mode mentally, right? So that's how that reactive mind works. It's going to be throwing things at you unconsciously, right? And you'll start to have those reactions. And then, then you have this situation where you have this sort of bad relationship and she couldn't tell you why. If she breaks up with him, then she doesn't know why, right? So, unless you handle those specific moments of pain underneath this kind of situation, you're not going to handle the relationship, right? So, and the mind is very powerful, so it's going to protect itself. And sometimes if it's a very traumatic thing that occurred, those memories will often go completely into unconsciousness. I've had countless women that do not remember that they were molested, and then they find out doing the dynamic therapy, and they're like very surprised, and it explains everything, and then they come right out of it. So it makes a big difference. So that unconscious reaction from the past moments of pain is what dianetics actually handle. And it's a very exact therapy, and it just helps train you out of those reactions so you're not reacting irrationally in that later moment in life. Good. So then here's the Dianetics book. I'm going to show you one chapter in this. This is the book that I very much recommend to at least read and tell me what you think about it. There's a section in here on the subject of love. Since we're talking about generational trauma, it's on page 371. It's very helpful to know. So, when we're talking about generational trauma, we are talking about how the basic core of the family and the woman is love. And how different moments in, being a family that was not, of that nature of love could then break that down. So Alvin Hubbard explains in this book that there's actually 3 kinds of love that he has observed, right? The first is genuine affection or affinity between people. So that, a good example of this would be, marrying your best friend. Or you go into the movies and you see countless examples. This is the one we always want to have, right? This knight in shining armor, things like that. There's love songs and movies, it just goes on. The second is magnetism between partners for the purpose of, sexual selection or procreation. This would be more like a little bit like a one-night stand kind of a situation, if you will. It doesn't necessarily, it's a little bit more on the physical plane rather than the spiritual plane. And the third is compulsive love dictated by their rationality. So this is like a reactive partnership You find many instances of this. You'll find this in the tabloids. You'll find it in the divorce courts. And, you know, it's the kind of love that sends kids weeping, crying in the corner to avoid the fight. And it creates broken homes, broken families, broken people, really. So Dianetics classifies that kind of love as reactive mind partnership. And this is where someone is driven together by compulsion due to trauma that they have had in the past. And it creates a highly reactive relationship where, say you have someone that could irrationally select a partner based on something from the past, right? So, you know, the girl who's always choosing the wrong kind of guy, and you only see it at the end when it's already like you already been through that bad breakup. Or the man who's reacting irrationally with anger or being attracted to a woman that he knows is going to cheat on him. Sometimes, somehow you just can't stay away, right? So, in a relationship, you can start with the first kind of love where you have a natural, like a genuine affinity, right? And then due to hidden memories or past pain, it slowly starts to trigger or stimulate those past incidents, and that you slowly start building this irrational reaction to the person, and through time, these, you know, good relationships start turning into worse and worse and worse, and then you have the breakup. So the solution to all this, and also any kind of generational trauma, is to actually address those past moments of pain and those incidents. Because if you don't, you could be in a great relationship and then all of a sudden you find yourself divorced or in a bad family, you don't know why. So that is what Dianetics handles. Those past things that are not getting triggered again. So the best thing to do is just to read the book on Dianetics, because that actually has all that data. It's a very thick book. It's the #1 best-selling self-help book because it is exact technology and it really does work. And anyone can use it to improve themselves. And also if you want to actually do Dianetics, you can definitely schedule an appointment or you can come check it out. We have a center in Central Ohio. It's open to anybody. There's books that you can get here. We also have personality tests. That's a very helpful tool to learn your strengths, anything that might be weakening those, so that you can kind of figure out what to start with and how to approach improving yourself. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate being here. And I give it back to Butter Teacher.
Thank you to all of our speakers. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just go into some Q&A and ask a few questions. So if you could come back up and have a seat next to my brother Danny, that would be fantastic. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Sister Jenny was saying, and that is that a lot of trauma sometimes causes us to, the experience may be so difficult to face that we bury it. We bury it, but it's there. It's always there in the subconscious mind. We may not be consciously thinking of it, but it's buried in the subconscious mind. And when a certain event happens, then it's triggered. And we see that come out in what I would say is self-destructive behavior. We've all heard of some women, and they'll say, why do I continue to find these abusive men? Right? Because of trauma. You know, there's so many different things. Why don't I speak up when I see that something is wrong? Trauma. Why don't I, I'll tell you a good one. Why don't I open the mail? Because them bills be coming in and we don't want this trauma. these are traumatic things. One of the things as black people that we may not recognize as being trauma and how we have been conditioned is that after slavery, black people built towns all over America. But my father told me that many of our successful black men would go out and they would never come home because they were lynched. And if you look at a lot of lynching pictures, they're wearing suits, right? And on top of that, those towns were burned down. Many banks, we don't know these histories. We don't know that we would put our money in banks as successful black people and whites would come, take the money out, then burn it down. They take the money out first. Then they would burn the bank down and there was no recourse. Generational wealth destroyed. Black towns burned down. And they would use, in most cases, the victimization of the white woman to justify their behavior of destroying our towns. So as a consequence of that generational trauma, you know what we began to do? Instead of being an entrepreneurial mind, saying I'm going to build me a business, we said you can't build a business. You will have to wear your success around your neck, or a nice watch, or a nice car. For black people, it's usually Cadillacs, right? So we began to show our wealth, but not build any wealth. So this is one of those generational traumas that we have to begin to understand and reverse because they're destructive. They're non-productive. And so with that, I want to go ahead and open up the floor. And I want to ask the first question. And that first question would be to Ms. Jenny, if you could talk about, once again, how can women, right? How can women begin to find themselves again and come out of an abusive relationship or even a neglectful relationship?
Okay, that's a very good question. So, there's a technology in Scientology that's the different levels of emotions. It's called the emotional tone scale. I don't have all of those, the information with me right this moment, but one thing is it's a very, very helpful tool so that you can see what emotional level are you at and how are you reacting. Because what you put out, right? If you could imagine life as a mirror, what you're putting out is what you're going to receive. And it actually makes a big difference. You can walk down the street, have a super happy smile on your face. You're going to get someone smiling back at you, 100%. And if you walk out on the street and you're like, don't look at anyone, and you're ashamed, or you're feeling whatever in your head, you're having a bad day, the time of the month, whatever it might be, right? You're not going to have that kind of you'll get back maybe someone that bumps into you because, whatever it might be, or someone having their bad day and you're not helping their day, so they're going to give their bad day to you too. So when you're talking about how to come out, when you're talking about how to come out of something like that, as far as being in a low emotional state for a long time, the first thing to do is understand where are you at on your emotional level. So this is a book called The Emotional Tone Scale. It's very, sort of like a scale of different emotions. It's very helpful to look for yourself. And it's sort of a crude picture of cute little happy fuzzy guys here, right? But it shows different emotional levels. So the first thing I would do is see where you are at on your emotional level, and then see if there's a point that started, if it's a lower level especially. So if you started feeling unhappy, okay, did it start because of a relationship? Did it start when you were younger? Like I had, as an example, anxiety when I was younger. And didn't really know where it was from, but it was happening in my relationships. Funny story is, I had a best friend. Our families were best friends, and we were very close. You know, when you have that first love that you don't really, you're still young, and you don't really want to say it, you're so embarrassed about it. So finally it broke down, and I told his mom that I liked him. And, you know, of course she told him. And I was like, I can't believe you told him. And then he was such a nice person, and we started dating. And one day, I mean, I was probably like 13 or 14. It was just great puppy love at that moment. But one day we were on a date, and he put his hand on my leg. Not in a sexual way, really, at all. It was totally just a pure affection. And I froze. Like, I was instantly terrified. And I had no idea why. The next day, I stopped talking to him. I broke up with him. Basically, he calls me, so cute, like, can I be your boyfriend? The sweetest thing. And I'm like, no. And he's like, why? I'm like, we live too far away. I'm trying to make a sense of why I'm reacting this way, right? And I can't. I have no idea. I don't know what to tell him. He, of course, is sad, moved on. And it wasn't until I, went back, I was like, okay, when did I start feeling that anxiety on relationships? And actually, when I did Dianetics, I went into a much earlier moment when, it was a very traumatic moment. I was 4, and I didn't remember it. So that brought that to light. And then all of my happiness as far as okay, I'm now interested in that area of my life again. Because I was going like this to every boy that approached me at that moment, right? That got reinvigorated, Met my husband, by the way, I knew him for 4 years, and I turned him down more than once. Thank God he was persistent. But it took me, pulling out what are those earlier incidents of trauma that was buried, if it's buried, it's buried, to come out of that, come up the different emotional levels so that I could then have a good relationship, which has been a fantastic relationship because you don't have the underlying factors there anymore. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
This was a beautiful gathering this evening. You asked a question about, specifically directed towards women, and I'm not a woman. But I think as men, we have a huge responsibility in how our women behave. And I say that is that, I look back when I was other than self, as you have mentioned. I spent 17 years in the streets, alcohol, drugs, in and out of the criminal justice system, things of that nature. And I think back and I look at how things had dramatically changed, and they were horrible then, but now they're on a whole nother level of horribleness, if there is such a word, that you can imagine. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us that whenever you see a no good woman, you better believe behind her there's a no good man. So there's not really a such thing as a no good woman. It's the no good man. And as men, our duty is to reflect God. And if we reflect God in our behavior, in our actions, and in the way we involve ourselves with other people, has a direct effect on how people act. And I'll say this in conclusion, is that if, a lot of times when we look at problems, we always want to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, which is not going to solve the problem. So we hear about a gun epidemic, the gun epidemic in school shootings. Well, let's remove the guns. Let's ban guns. They never go to the point to say, why does that person want to shoot somebody? So if somebody didn't want to shoot anybody, if there was no market for somebody to need drugs or to need alcohol or to abuse, if you go to the root of the problem, then that's the solution. It's not the gun. And, you know, we grow up in a society where as men, we're very emotional. And we react off of those emotions. So we're fed pornography. We're fed obscene images on television, in books, now on social media. You can go on Twitter and you can be scrolling on the Pope of Rome and something will pop up. Now, if you don't have, like you said, the ability to remove yourself from that degenerate behavior, then you go into a rabbit hole that you can never come out of. So as men, we must begin to improve on ourselves. And I think if we improve on ourselves, and if we don't feed into what this world puts in front of us, then the women ultimately will fall into a better behavior, because there's no, if a woman dresses in a way and you don't respond to that dress, she's going to change her dress. So I think we as men have a large responsibility in our community, first with ourselves, then in our neighborhood, then in our community, to help the overall picture. So I think a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on, well, the woman shouldn't dress like that. No, you shouldn't look at a woman dressed like that. We're taught to lower your gaze. So I think if we get back into the element of the family, not being so into involving ourselves in the culture of the world shapes us. You know, we're in the world, but we shouldn't be of the world. And I think if we can change our behavior, that it'll help the women. Because, you know, we're a driving force in a lot of this. So I was just thinking of that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. That was a great question. Again, like I stated earlier, unfortunately, we have been made other than ourselves. Because the woman again does not know her true value. It makes her lower her standard and makes her accept what it is that the world says is her standard. Unfortunately, we see a lot of women that are unclothed, a lot of women that is attracted to the certain type of music that makes them, you want to say, probably raunchy, or just make them act lower than themselves. They call it that animalistic type of behavior that we're seeing in our women. And because our women don't understand, I think there's honestly, I want to say it's a mental death. Because most of the time our women don't even know that they're doing something other than themselves. You know, before I joined the Nation of Islam, you know, I was into those things. I was listening to raunchy music and, you know, being uncovered, thought that was okay because that's what I see everyone else doing. So the women is looking at what is acceptable to this world and not understanding what is really acceptable in the eyes of God. And I think if the woman was to, again, understand her true value and the true nature of herself and actually understanding the science of the woman, like there's a science of the man, the science of human, understand the science of the woman and why the woman was created, why God created the woman, why God created you as a woman, and what's your duty. And when the woman understands that, she now knows how to operate in this world. It wasn't until, again, you know, I had to have those experiences for me to understand, you know, that I wasn't acting as myself. I was acting as what the world has displayed, you know, that I am. I thought my value was in, you know, being uncovered or, you know, showing certain parts of my body because, you know, that's what attracted the attention. And when we go down to the lack of attention, well, not the lack of, well, I want to say that the lack of attention in the wrong way, that's what's really hindering our women. Because naturally, I want to say, you know, our women are longing this love that they're seeking in men. And because they're not getting it from men, it makes them behave in certain ways. And again, it really wasn't until I tapped back into myself, who am I? You know, she spoke about just those instances of just, like I was in an abusive relationship for a few years, from the time I was 14 to the time I was 25. And I had to check in with myself during that healing journey, after I had my son, had to realize, like, what was it that was going on that I constantly attracted the same type of men. And as I looked down, like I literally wrote it down, like, okay, I date this person, what happened? I dated this person, what happened? What was going on? And in every relationship, I noticed it was a pattern. And the pattern was that I did not fully give myself to none of the men that I was in a relationship with, so I never took the relationship serious, in which when you put yourself in a situation when you're in a relationship, you know, there's supposed to be commitment. So within that, you have cheating and all those good things, and then that's when the toxicity come in because, you know, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I noticed that cycle, but when I went all the way down to my first love, I want to say, I was like 13 years old. It took me all the way back to my father, my biological father. And the moment that he left, he came into my life and then he left. And in that moment, I didn't understand why he did that, so that made me put a guard up, not knowing unconsciously when it comes to fully committing myself to any man, you know. So it's really understanding, you know, as a woman, what is going on within you that you are constantly attracting these type of men or constantly attracting these circumstances. And even just as in general, not even just women, like why are we attracting these certain situations? Because I truly believe what's inside comes out on the outside. You know, what's going on in your inner view is what's going on in your outer view. You know, it's a reflection, just like you said, it's that mirror. So I truly believe, you know, this men or women, you know, and my heart is really with the women because I see there's a great need for discipline in the woman. Our women don't have discipline. And because they don't have discipline, it's making it hard for I'll say society as a whole, because, you know, the woman brings the children in. You know, it's hard for the women to actually discipline the children nowadays. And then we're seeing these toxic relationships and the baby mama and baby daddy cycle going on, and there's no actual foundation in the home, is making the mother, the woman, be more masculine, which is making her other than herself. So when we think about that as far as a woman and healing as a woman, just in general, it just takes me back down to always just self first. The woman has to know her value. The woman has to know who she is. And it's within that where she can rise into consciousness to be able to help the collective and help the future generation. So the woman has to actually go back and address the issues, like my sister said, address the trauma, address the issue. You take that, and then you grow from it.
Thank you. So would you say the culture that we grow up is traumatic?
Because as a young black man, culture is often we traumatic.
I didn't know that. Till I get sick, I thought. I did not realize that. Those things that I embraced and done were traumatic. So would be that how would you say?
Yeah.
Comfortable and women and Because if you get this something, like I will just, so listen to it. She's spoiled. Over her seats leaks after that's really wow. It's really wow. And you hear that from males tend to be. And so to me is a balance between that thing just particular to maybe to what men that is being exactly what Super was there grow doing today. Being control the narrative. And so they produce something. You know what I'm saying? So that's the man's part is that he is we that being why this confused. Whatever. A pensive society, right? And we don't know about so we don't know right? We get exploited, right? That's pensive. If the advertisement makes you mad to design and make feel inferior, if you don't embrace it, so they tell our kids, get them there as yours. If you don't get them there as yours. And I got a bunch of years, so I know a whole lot of shit. And so, that's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, you're right on point with that, and I can answer that real quick. It's just, like my brother said, social engineering. Because we haven't seen nothing else. We see what we've seen for a long time. The culture has shaped us in a way, but we also have to understand who world we're living in, and as to what the big agenda is. They want to break down the family structure, especially in the Black community, because it's within the family is where you can build the nation rise, and your family, right? And the nation don't rise any higher than its woman, right? So, like my sister said, the breaking down of the woman, they go and attack the woman first because they know within the woman they're able to dismantle the family. So, I truly believe, like you said, yeah, it is a culture thing, and we have been affected, and that brings me to epigenetics, to seeing that, our environment, and then the constant seeing that imagery of constantly seeing the things that we see in this world, if it's the sexy reds that they're putting up as a display. Okay, I'm gonna dress like her then. That's after I can get that attention, and that's what I'm gonna do. But or the rappers, Lil Baby, you have the young men in the drug industry and stuff like that, and they're seeing that and they're putting this up on a pedestal as our idol, and because we're looking at it and the children are looking at it as an idol, we believe that that is what we should be. So within that, I just believe it's also just us, when we see those things and we're aware of it as adults and as parents, we should take initiatives to change the narrative. We are the only ones that can change the narrative. So I believe just with my young son, I strive to make sure he doesn't watch certain things, he doesn't listen to certain things. I try to be mindful of the way I speak and the way I talk. And it's within the starting from self, starting at home, you're able to, constantly build up on them habits. And then when you have a situation that comes up, I can say, I was being funny, at my event. I had an event like 2 weeks ago. And, it's that balance, right? I'm in the world, I'm hearing the sexy red or the Glorilla, the beat is, they get you with the beat, So it's something like, okay, make you want to gyrate, look. But it's like, okay, hold on, wait. Take me back to myself. So when we're able to catch ourselves, one, address it, one know that, okay, I see how this is affecting my mind. What am I going to do to change it, right? And when you constantly do it, it's that repetition of constantly just checking yourself, checking your emotions, checking your consciousness to see, you know, if you're being affected by that, then you're able to, you know, just change the whole dynamic and change the narrative of it. So definitely the society and culture has definitely have a big effect on it. But it's also just understanding too, when we see those things, we have to be bold enough to speak up. If we see our children, you know, listening to these things or doing these things, address it in a nice manner, you know, in a kind manner. So yeah.
And Brother Betty, can you touch on that? And also, I know that you deal a lot with young age. Can you touch on some of the things or give some advice on how we could begin to help our young men navigate through this generational, through trauma, and come out whole?
I have the wonderful honor and opportunity to teach families. So I've taught, you know, uncles, nephews, aunt, nieces, younger brothers, older sisters, all of that. So I love that. Matter of fact, the woman I left earlier, one of her sons is in my class. Wonderful child. So I have that opportunity. And one thing I've learned, even before I got into education, is that I think, was it you that mentioned it? That young people don't have a place for them to speak to who they are. Whether it's artistically, whether it's just, hey, I'm having a bad day, they don't. And we have to really, as parents, as mentors, as coaches, as educators, we have to really give those children those opportunities. And there are days when my students come to class and we'll circle up, we'll do a circle and we'll talk and we keep it confidential, you know, unless like they might hurt themselves or somebody else. And I'm realizing even as adults, like me and my partner throw a lot of house parties. And I remember my sister used to always joke because she used to always say, every time I go to your parties, no one's dancing. And it's because we're all in there talking, you know, interacting with one another, asking questions, talking about trauma, talking about this. So I realized that even as adults, we don't have those spaces to be our true selves and to really express ourselves and ask those questions and find out what's going on, even on that level. Because once again, I know I talked about therapy earlier. Therapy should also come with community, meaning you should have these spaces where we speak and talk to one another, where we could find answers. I have brothers that I can lean on. My father wasn't in my life, but I do have older gentlemen. I have elders in the community that I can go talk to anytime and they'll listen to me. And I try to do the same thing. I mentor men between the ages of 40 all the way down to 13. So, I give them those opportunities. And I think you know, the thing is this idea is not expensive. We can do this, you know, with just, you know, some food at the house, some water and juice, some sandwiches, and you see how quickly people open up. So I say with our young, you know, and again, it's not just for the boys, but also for the girls. They just don't have those spaces where they can talk. And we need to provide those in the schools, outside of the schools, in the gyms, you know, in the homes, outside of your door, on the stoop. We need to do those as much as possible. And you know what? I run into a lot of men that say, you know, well, I'm not educated. And I'm like, yes, you are. Because learning about yourself is self-education. You know, Dr. Naim Alpar said that the best education is self-education. They can't take that away from you. Right? So the way I learn is to build them with brothers and sisters on the street corner. That's how I learn. People always be like, where did you learn Black history? I learned Black history on the street. I didn't learn that in schools. The brothers and sisters taught me that on the street. So you gotta continue to do the same thing because guess what? They're not teaching that stuff in the schools. They never did before and they never will. So that we have to teach that because that's our responsibility. So as a Black man, my duty is to civilize, right? The deaf, dumb, and blind, crippled, and crazy, right? That's my job. Wherever I go, I have to do that. No matter where I'm at. If I'm at the airport, I'm in the bathroom, I gotta always drop a jewel. Cause that's what was done for me, right? That's why I'm at where I'm at right now. Somebody always dropped a jewel and I took it and ran with it. So I know it's a lot, but it's really that simple. It really is that simple. Thank you.
The letter could repeat who's the
Who's which letter? So the ruleless letter, supposedly, Willie Lynch was a slave owner that was from the West Indies. So basically, in America, the slave owners were having problems with the slaves. So they called the slave, Willie Lynch over to help with their problem because what was happening was slaves were rebellion, right? They didn't want to be slaves basically, right? So they were rebellion, didn't want to work. So what they were doing was they were basically killing the slaves. So he's like, hold on, you're losing good economics. We're not supposed to be killing them. You have to break them mentally and psychologically, right? And so this is why we're physically strong but mentally weak. It was already planned and designed. So some of the quotes that I quoted was from the Willie Lynch letter, which is The Making of a Slave. And I have a nonprofit called Cuff Foundation. So one of the first lectures that I did for Cuff Foundation was the making of a mental slave for the next 1,000 years, where I break down the Willie Lynch letter and how you still see this he said it, a foolproof method for controlling black people hundreds of years later. And so I feel like I always say this. I feel like this should be a mandatory read in every black household, because he talks about the division, dividing the man and the woman. He talks about dividing the light against the dark, right? The old against the young. We still see that within our culture today. So that was Willie Lynch. And so, thank you to the guest speaker. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to everybody being involved. Just a few things that I wanted to touch on. I heard a lot of reading. That's what I heard. And it's so crazy because one of the quotes that they always say, if you want to have something from a nigga, right, put it in a book. So this is why reading is so fundamental for our people, because we can become aware, right? We can become self-aware. We can become informative. And it's important for us to read. She also touched on a nation can rise no higher than its woman. So as the women, we have to start back with our self-love and our self-worth, instill it back into us, because we're the ones that nurture and raise the kids. We need more chiefs in the community, right? I love that, taking accountability, right? We have to take accountability within our community. We have too many Indians and not enough chiefs running around. I always say that. So to hear these black men come up here and say, okay, we can be the solution to the problem for our women, I just love to hear it. It's taking accountability on every single angle, even as women. If we can instill, I always say that for me, if I can tell young women that haven't, painted their wound yet or not married, wait until marriage. Wait until you're married. Just don't give your wounds to anybody, right? Taking that accountability, instilling this into our young girls, making sure they're still virgins, right? Keeping that purity bloodline going on within our community. So then when they're virgins, right, they wait till they're married, not married, but having a foundation as well, right? We're building up. We're reversing this Willie Lynch letter, and we're building up, we're building a nation. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much. Knowledge for Life will come up here and speak. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Come on, Brother Mohammed.
All right. Thank you. I want to just thank everyone who participated in this conference. And as a people, we just have to get, serious about our mental health issues. That's really what this is about. It's a mental health issue. And before we get any type of reparations in the form of financial reparations, we need to be repaired mentally. Because if we did, I always thought that if the government would have just went ahead and gave us them reparations, they would have got all that money back by now. I don't know what they were waiting for. But because in that Willie Lynch letter, there's a phenomenon that they didn't want to occur, where an external force would come and bring to the minds of the mentally dead a knowledge that would raise them up. That fear caused them not to give any type of reparations in no way, shape, or form. In no way, shape, or form. So I wanted to just end it off by saying that this series of conferences leading to a conference that we want to put together in February called State of Emergency, Stop the Violence Against Our Youth. We don't want to ask anymore for black youth to stop the violence when violence is constantly being perpetrated upon black youth. It's being perpetrated from external forces inside that. Within our own community, black people have begun to hate our own youth. We are the worst enemies of our youth, because it's the responsibility of the prior generation to build a base or a platform or a foundation for the preceding generation to build off of. And think about it. What have we left for our youth? And we wonder why our youth are committing suicide at higher rates. And in some cases, the suicide is coming in the form of homicide, hoping that they would be healed in that act. So with that, I want to thank all of you. I want you all to please subscribe to our channel, Know for Life. And we also would love for you to donate. If you want to become a donating member, we have a newsletter that you can join, and we will send that out and you can donate through that newsletter. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and may God continue to bless you and your family with the light of truth and understanding. Peace be unto you.